So let's talk about a huge paradox. Are you actually moving forward or just making a lot of noise? We're all constantly busy, right? But does every single step we take actually move us forward? It's that feeling of being busy, yet totally stuck. You're walking, but just going in circles. So to figure out our path in the world, we've got to look inside our own heads first. Think of your brain like a giant living city. It's not a computer. It's full of roads. And guess what? Our strongest thoughts are what pave these main roads, controlling all our mental traffic. Yeah, when you learn something, you're not just getting info. You're physically changing your brain's biology. Sticking to what you know just makes old roads busier, but new info, that forges brand new paths. Okay, so this whole idea of a path isn't just about our brains. It's way bigger. I mean, think about it. From the very first moment, life is a journey. It's a race. It's this tiny marathon, right? Millions of cells all on a single, focused path to one goal. And this same law applies to the biggest things in the universe. Nothing just sits still. Everything's moving. Planets, galaxies, you name it. They're all traveling on these huge cosmic highways we call orbits. Get this. Even our entire solar system is on a journey that takes almost 250 million years. So, if everything is on a path, what's the difference between just any old path and the right one? You hear this idea a lot, right? The straight path. And we usually think it's the fastest way. But watch out. The shortest path can be a total trap. The mouse just goes for the cheese. But we're different. We can stop and ask, hey, who put this cheese here? That changes everything. And that's the real meaning. It's not about being fast. It's about being aware enough to avoid the trap. Exactly. It's all about how you get there. The quality of your walk matters more than just arriving. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, we get so obsessed with the finish line, we forget something crucial. Maybe the whole point of being here isn't to arrive at some destination. It's just to walk. Think about it. The joy, the lessons, the growth, that all happens on the way. That is the prize. So here's a final thought for you. Are you just moving around, or are you really walking your path? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really powerful idea. What if all your hard work, all your busyness, isn't actually getting you anywhere? Let's break down the huge difference between just moving and making real, meaningful progress. So let's just start with a feeling I bet we all know. Your calendar's full, you're rushing from one thing to the next, but deep down, you've got that nagging feeling that you're just spinning your wheels, not actually getting anywhere that matters. The speaker we're analyzing today just nails this paradox with a Turkish phrase, hareket ediyor ama yol almıyor. It literally means you're moving but not covering any ground. And that simple idea gets to a huge truth. Being busy and making progress are two totally different things. Okay, so that brings us to our first big idea. We're going to explore that critical difference between just being in motion and actually making progress. So what separates someone who's walking with a purpose from someone who's just lost? You'll see that this one distinction changes everything. See, according to our source, when you're moving without getting anywhere, you're not just stalled. You're in a state he calls kaybolmuştur, which means lost. It's all that activity, but with zero direction. And that's exactly why understanding what a path is becomes so incredibly important. Now, this is where the whole idea of a path gets absolutely fascinating, because it's not just some nice metaphor for your life, it's a biological reality, something that is physically taking shape inside your brain this very second. I want you to think of your brain not as a computer, but more like a huge, sprawling city. Every single thought, every idea, every feeling you have, it's like a car traveling along this incredibly complex network of roads. And get this. This is just incredible. The speaker explains that when you learn, information literally becomes biology. A new idea isn't just an abstract thought. It physically creates a new road in your brain as your synapses connect. You are quite literally building the city inside your mind with every thought. And, just like in any city, not all roads are created equal. Some are just faint, dusty back alleys. Things you learned a long time ago but barely ever think about. But others are massive, 8-lane superhighways. These are your dominant thoughts, your core beliefs, your most common emotions, like fear.
anger, or even compassion, where the traffic is just flowing nonstop, day in and day out.
So, this leads to a really powerful question for all of us. What kind of traffic is flowing on your mental highways? What thoughts, what fears, what hopes are you reinforcing every single day, turning them into the default roads your mind automatically takes?
But here's the thing. This principle of being on a path doesn't stop inside our own skulls. As we're about to see, this idea scales up from the tiny world of our brain to the vastness of the entire universe. The source then zooms way, way out, pointing out that this whole idea of being on a path isn't just a human thing. Nope, it applies to literally everything in existence, from the smallest cell to the biggest galaxies. Out there in the cosmos, the path has a different name, Yorunge, or orbit. Nothing is just sitting still. Every single planet, star, and galaxy is traveling on its own designated route through space and time, all held in place by these immense, invisible forces. And if you really want to wrap your head around the mind-boggling scale of these journeys, just look at this number, 249 million years. That's our sun's galactic year. It's the time it takes our entire solar system to make just one trip around the center of the Milky Way. We are all passengers on a truly cosmic journey. So what happens when something strays from its path? Well, for a star, leaving its orbit means chaos. It's a cosmic apocalypse. And the speaker argues that the exact same thing is true for us. To wander off our true path is to create our very own personal apocalypse.
All right, so if staying on a path is that vital, how in the world do we make sure we're on the right one? Well, this next section gets into a huge trap that we all fall for, the temptation of the shortcut.
We're all naturally wired for efficiency, right? We're always looking for the quickest way to get from A to B. But our source gives a pretty stark warning. The right path, or sirate mustikim, is almost never the shortest one. In fact, that easy route is often the most dangerous.
And to really hammer this point home, he uses this simple, brilliant analogy. A mouse sees the goal, a delicious piece of cheese. It does the logical thing and takes the shortest, most direct path to get it. And the consequence? It runs straight into a trap, totally blinded by its focus on that prize.
And that right there is the crucial difference. A human has the ability to think on a higher level. We can stop for a second and ask, why? Why is this cheese just sitting here? Why does this path seem a little too easy? Who benefits from me taking this path? That ability to question the goal itself is what separates a wise traveler from the mouse. So, if the destination, the cheese, isn't the most important thing, then what is? Well, this brings us right to the very heart of this entire philosophy, learning to find the value in the process itself. The purpose of life, the source argues, is not to arrive at some final destination. Life is not a transaction. The whole point is the act of walking. It's the process, the growth, the learning, and the person you become while you're on the way. So many of us get caught in this transactional mindset, right? If I do this, then I will get that. We get so focused on the prize at the finish line that we completely miss the value, the joy, and the meaning of the process itself. We forget that the walk is the reward. When it's all said and done, what do we actually get to keep? It's not the destination we finally reached. It's the quality of the journey we took to get there. The memory isn't of the arrival, it's of the walk.
And that leaves us with this final, really powerful thought from the source material. The bird dies, but we remember its flight. When the traveler dies, what's left? What will be the memory of your walk?
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take your sources, which are always complex, rich, and often, pretty challenging, and really distill them into clear, actionable knowledge.
Exactly.
And today, we need to strap in for a massive conceptual journey. Our focus is a single fundamental idea, the path. The source material, this is the concept of Yol.
And this deep dive is just so crucial because this concept of the way it's framed here as utterly essential to all of existence.
All of exists.
All of it. It continues vertically, horizontally, deeply, and internally. So, it's not just a physical route you walk on, but the entire structural framework of reality.
Wow.
Yeah, from the smallest cell in your body to the largest galaxy in the universe.
Okay, so the reason we have to interrogate this so thoroughly is this paradox that just runs through all of your material. This idea that something can be in vigorous motion, yet completely stationary in terms of true progress. The source phrasing is, it's a stark warning. It says, it is moving, but not making progress.
Harket edior amayo lamior.
So many of us feel busy, right?
Yeah.
We're always moving. But are we truly advancing?
And that distinction, I mean, that's our mission today, the difference between just frantic activity and purposeful travel.
Right.
We're looking at really diverse definitions of the path across multiple domains. And interestingly, the sources often define the proper course by analyzing the catastrophe that happens when something deviates from it.
So you define it by what it's not.
Exactly. The core ambition here is to move beyond simply walking to understanding what it means to be a true traveler. A yoku.
And we have some truly mind-bending material to cover. I mean it. We're going to unpack the surprising science of how knowledge literally transforms your brain's hardware.
Yeah, the software becomes the hardware.
We'll also explore the sort of dark side of cellular movement by looking at autoimmune diseases, and we are going to definitively correct some big misconceptions about the straight path, the Sarata Mustaki.
Oh, absolutely.
It is not a bridge. And it is definitely not the shortest route. Okay, let's unpack this. We should start with the most internal and complex map that we possess, the inner road.
The inner road.
Your sources make this really powerful foundational claim that what brings you somewhere, what actually initiates any purposeful journey, it isn't the movement of your feet.
No.
It's the movement of your mind and your heart, your akal and kalp first.
That is the starting line. It's the absolute starting line for the entire path concept. I mean, all physical action is just a consequence of a prior mental and emotional mapping.
So if I end up somewhere, it's because my mind was already headed there.
It was already there. If you arrive at a specific location, it means your desire, your intent, your capacity to think, it brought you there long before your car did. The sources often refer to the seat of this intentionality as the Akoldem Kalb, which is, you can translate it as the thinking heart.
The thinking heart. I like that.
Yeah, it emphasizes that this isn't just, cold cognition, it's intellect that's imbued with purpose. So the road in your mind is the absolute prerequisite.
And the physical structure of the brain itself, the very thing that houses this thinking heart, it's structurally organized as a path system.
It is.
I love the analogy that the sources use here. They say viewing the brain is like standing on Samluka Hill in Istanbul at midnight. You don't just see random lights. You see a system of illumination.
A whole network.
Yeah. Side streets, avenues, and main highways, the Autobahnlar.
It's the perfect analogy. It really is, because it implies hierarchy and where. These aren't temporary connections, The brain prioritizes established routes.
So the highways, the Autobahnlar, what are they exactly in the brain?
They're the deeply ingrained, often subconscious thought patterns we fall back on, your habits, your core beliefs, your immediate reactions.
The defaults.
They're the defaults. And the side streets, well, they're the newer ideas, the potential connections we haven't solidified yet. And, neurological imaging confirms this. The more often a connection is used, the more myelination, that's insulation it receives.
Which makes it faster.
It makes it faster, more permanent highway.
In the nature of what actually flows through these mental highways, that defines the person. This is the traffic.
The traffic, yeah.
So if we observe someone's most dominant thought patterns, we're basically seeing what's perpetually flowing on their mental autobahns. Lust, is it ambition, hatred, or is it fear?
And the quality of that mental traffic is just critical to our internal architecture. The sources, they specifically warn about fear.
Fear traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it isn't described as some, cautious light guiding you away from danger. It's described as a relentless, unbroken, destructive stream.
A dark, deadly light.
A dark, deadly light.
Okay, why dark and deadly? That's intense.
Because unchecked fear or anxiety, which is described here as the equivalent of cancer-causing ultraviolet rays, it doesn't just pass through, it actually damages the infrastructure.
It corrodes the road.
It corrodes the road. Think of chronic stress or unrelenting anxiety. It forces the brain to shunt resources away from the complex thought processes, the high-level autobahns, and it reroutes everything to the emotional centers, the amygdala.
So you're stuck in fight or flight.
It's a permanent state of emergency. You're moving constantly, right? You're worrying, reacting, but you are not yol almak. You're not making progress on the self because the fear traffic has paralyzed the higher functioning parts of your map.
So if the traffic in my head is constantly negative, that corrosive energy is actively shaping my physical reality.
Yes.
Which brings us where it gets really interesting. This is the central biological claim. The sources claim that information, the software, the Yazalom, it literally transforms into biology. the hardware.
This is where philosophy and neuroscience just collide. We treat knowledge as this abstract thing, but when it's truly acquired, it manifests physically.
How? What's the mechanism?
The source details the mechanism. New knowledge causes the tips of the synaptic fibers, the synapse, to lengthen.
Okay, so explain that. The synapse is that tiny gap, right? The little chemical handshake between two neurons.
Precisely. And they're described in the sources as border gates. When information successfully crosses that gate, meaning when you truly learn and integrate a concept, that physical connection becomes longer and stronger.
Wow.
In neuroscience, this process is called long-term potentiation. It's the mechanism of memory and skill acquisition. So a new piece of software, an abstract idea, causes the biological hardware to literally rewire itself.
So you're telling me that when I learn something profound, I don't just feel changed, I am physically a new version of myself.
You are.
My internal path has been physically extended, enhanced.
You have literally crossed a conceptual mountain. I mean, think about a complex problem you struggled with. Before you solved it, the neural connections necessary to integrate the data were weak, or maybe they were non-existent.
Right, you're just staring at it.
You're just staring at it. The moment you grasp the solution, those synapses lengthen, new connections fire rapidly, and that pathway is established. And the more complex the thought, abstract reasoning, ethics, philosophy, the more dense that network becomes.
And the aggregate result of all this constant learning and abstract thought is actually visible. It's the physical restructuring of the brain, creating more surface area, more valleys and peaks.
More wrinkles.
More wrinkles.
The sources mention that a baby's brain in the womb is comparatively smooth. The intricate folding and wrinkling, we call them cortical gyri and sulci, they develop rapidly after birth as the brain interacts with the environment and forms these complex associations.
So that surface area is what allows for higher order thinking.
It is. The better your software, the information and skills you acquire, the more complex and efficient your hardware becomes.
That's phenomenal. But this leads directly to a logical consequence that I think a lot of people struggle with. The pain of progress. If knowledge is biological change, that change can't be effortless.
No, it cannot be. And the sources actually praise the concept of the burning brain or the confused mind.
Which is so counterintuitive, right? In our culture, we value mental ease, clarity.
We do.
Why should mental discomfort be celebrated? I mean, if my brain is burning, doesn't that just suggest I'm reaching overload?
It suggests you are actively breaking old pathways and constructing new ones, and that is inherently taxing work.
Okay.
Information that doesn't challenge you is, by definition, information you already know. It's just running on a pre-existing highway. The burn is productive cognitive dissonance. It's the necessary friction of synaptic lengthening. If there's no friction, you're not moving forward.
That's a really sharp critique of modern information consumption, isn't it?
It is.
If we're constantly seeking out content that only confirms our existing beliefs or, makes us feel smart because we already agree with it, we're not actually learning anything.
You've hit the nail on the head. If you are only searching for confirmation, you are stationary. You are moving your eyes, you're scrolling your device, you're filling your calendar, but you are not Yoel Elmuk. You're just reinforcing the old self.
You're not building the new insan.
The new person.
Not at all. You're not building the new person the path demands.
So the goal of the path is transformation. If I finish this deep dive or I finish a difficult book and I am fundamentally the same person I was when I started, I haven't really learned.
You've just reinforced your existing library. Learning demands change. You have to emerge from the process with a redefined outlook, with new pathways established and old assumptions challenged.
So if you only seek the comfortable and familiar,
then you are moving, but you're effectively lost, because you're not advancing toward a higher self. That sets a very high bar for what constitutes a true journey. Now, if our internal paths must be constantly challenged and rebuilt, what happens when paths go fundamentally wrong, not just in thought, but on a vast biological and even cosmic scale?
So we transition now from the microscopic pathways of the mind to the vast encompassing pathways of the universe. And we begin, surprisingly, with the inception of life itself.
Right.
Which the sources describe as a fierce, wild, and even brutal journey.
The cellular race. 3 million sperm cells, or runners, described as engaging in a horrifying competition.
It is. It's an immediate existential conflict for the right to exist.
And it sets the tone for life being fundamentally defined by this constant vigilance in maintaining the proper boundaries.
Exactly. The source highlights that upon reaching the egg, the first massive conflict occurs. The egg recognizes the sperm, which carries genetically different information, X versus Y as a foreign, hostile object.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, the body's natural state is self-defense. So the defense mechanism has to either reject the foreign object or produce antibodies fighters to eliminate it.
And this foundational defense mechanism, this necessary hostility towards anything that is not self, is the root of an entire category of pathologies, autoimmune diseases.
So the sources directly connect this to our path concept.
Directly.
So autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, or even just common allergic reactions, they represent the body's defense system fundamentally losing its way.
Exactly. The defense system, the internal warrior, it mistakes a beneficial entity like a pollen grain or even a part of the self like your thyroid cells or joint tissue for an enemy. The cell has become, in the words of the source, confused and bewildered.
Can you elaborate on that? The physical symptoms as a deviation, like take an allergic reaction.
Okay, take a simple pollen grain. It arrives. It's harmless. But the body's defensive coding system, having lost its way, codes it as a foreign enemy soldier.
It misreads the signal.
Completely misreads it. And the resulting defensive attack is this unnecessary self-damaging inflammation. Histamines flood the system. You get swelling, sneezing, inflammation, all these massive, unwarranted self-attacks resulting from the immune system deviating from its proper path of self-preservation.
It's attacking a friend instead of a foe.
Precisely. And the sources apply this deviation concept even more profoundly to cancer.
Cancer is a cell that has lost its path.
Instead of performing its designated purpose within the structural organization of the body, its specific duty, it starts acting autonomously. It reproduces chaotically, and it attacks the very structure that sustains it.
It's the ultimate cellular betrayal.
It is. It demonstrates the catastrophic danger of any entity, no matter how small, deviating from its intended path.
And this concept of order and pathway isn't limited to the biological. The sources extend this rigorous order to the non-living realm.
To cosmic orbits, absolutely. The universe is not chaotic. It is structured by paths. Yoringa, or orbit, is the path for every celestial entity.
Every star, moon, planet, galaxy.
Every single one is held in this optimal, calculated balance, and this balance is what prevents the cosmos from collapsing into immediate chaos.
We know our sun is revolving around the galactic center because of that giant black hole at the center of the Milky Way. And this constant circular motion is often referred to in the sources as tavaf.
A ritual journey, or circumambulation. And this fixed adherence to the path is profoundly linked to the concept of tasbih, or glorification.
Which, as the sources point out, is not just counting beads.
Not at all. Tasbih is behaving according to one's purpose of creation.
So a star performing tasbih isn't speaking. It's just fulfilling its function.
Exactly. It glorifies the creator by perfectly adhering to the physical, gravitational, and astronomical laws assigned to it. The source claims that everything in the universe is making tasbih by maintaining its path, even though, quote, you do not understand their glorification.
It's a perfect silent obedience to the preordained design.
Yes, and to appreciate the scale of this, we really need to consider the vastness of these paths. We're all familiar with the solar year, right? 365 days.
Of course.
But the sources introduce the galaxy year, the time it takes for our entire solar system to complete one orbit around the galactic center.
And that takes a lot longer.
It takes a staggering 249 million years.
Wow. I can't even wrap my head around that number.
And that immense time frame just underscores the incredible stability and scale of this cosmic pathway system. We are on a journey that lasts nearly 250 million years, maintaining our specific fixed course through space-time.
So what sustains this unimaginable order? What holds it all together?
The four fundamental forces. The sources remind us that the paths are constructed and maintained by these forces.
Gravity, the weak and strong nuclear forces, and the electromagnetic force.
Right. Gravity, of course, defines the orbits of planets, but the others are just as crucial, just as path-defining. The strong nuclear force keeps the nucleus of atoms from flying apart. It literally holds matter together.
And the electromagnetic force defines chemistry and light, allowing interaction.
Exactly. These four forces are the structural architects, maintaining the ability for every entity, living or non-living, to stay on its path.
Which brings us to the ultimate consequence of deviation. This is where it all connects, linking the smallest cellular path error to the greatest cosmic failure. The definition of catastrophe, or Qiyamah.
The last hour, or Judgment Day, is often seen as this, preordained arbitrary event. But the sources redefine it fundamentally.
How so?
Qiyamah occurs when the sun, moon, or earth deviates from its path. Yildan Shakursa.
So catastrophe is simply the result of structural failure. The whole system collapses because the core entities, the celestial bodies, have lost their way.
And this is where the scale applies right back to the self, and it achieves maximum impact. If we, the human traveler, deviate from our path, our ethical and existential purpose, it is our own personal Qiyamah.
An internal catastrophic collapse of order and purpose.
It is. Not being on the path Yolda Olmamak is the existential crisis. It's the absolute failure state.
So the value of remaining on the path is not just spiritual. It's a matter of avoiding total structural collapse, both cosmic and personal.
Yes.
Okay, if the stakes are this high, we absolutely must understand how to correctly identify the straight path we ask for constantly in prayer.
We have to.
We're now moving into the ethical and conceptual realm, focusing on Sirado Mustaqim. And for many listeners, this concept carries very specific, long-held images. And our sources take direct aim at these popular misconceptions.
That's the most important clarification we have to make. First and foremost, the sources explicitly deny that Sirat refers to a physical bridge.
Okay, hold on. That's a massive clarification. For many, many people, the straight path is intrinsically linked to crossing this perilous razor-thin structure after death. You're saying that's just wrong.
The sources argue it's an interpretation that has its origins outside of the core tradition. They trace the idea back to Zoroastrian or ancient Chinese traditions that describe a crossing afterlife. The actual meaning of Sirat is simply road or way.
So if it's not a bridge to cross, then the nature of the constant prayer guide us to the straight path. That has to be reevaluated.
Completely. The key word is idina, which means direct us or guide us. It fundamentally does not mean transport us.
Oh.
The sources are absolutely clear on this point. God does not run a bus service to heaven. You are not asking for a ride. You're asking for the map, for the compass, and for the continual calibration needed to walk correctly.
And this capacity for self-calibration, it's tied to the two innate human potentials, right? Takva and fikr.
Virtue and deviation, yes, precisely. Humans are instilled with both potentials, which makes the path a constant choice. Fikr is a fascinating term. It's linked to fikar, which means to break out like the light of dawn breaking through darkness. Fikar.
So it's a breaking out.
But in an ethical context, fikr means breaking out of the bounds of responsibility. So irresponsibility is a form of breaking free, but in a destructive sense.
Breaking free from the ethical framework.
Yes. The sources mention the historical fikr wars, named precisely because those conflicts caused humans to deviate so widely from the path of moral conduct that the resulting societal breakdown lasted for decades. It just demonstrates that deviation is a choice with immediate generational consequences.
And this choice brings us to the second major misconception. The straight path is not defined by speed or directness.
Not at all.
In fact, if you define the path as the shortest ruler-drawn line, as the bird flies, kusususu, you will often fail.
And this is a direct philosophical challenge to our modern obsession with efficiency and optimization. We are programmed to believe the shortest distance between 2 points is progress. But in ethical and economic reality, this is often false.
I see the immediate conflict there. If the straight path isn't the shortest, isn't that inherently inefficient in a fast-paced world? How do the sources reconcile ethical conduct with economic reality?
By focusing on legitimacy and long-term structure over immediate gain. I mean, think about it. The shortest path to wealth is almost always the route to illicit earnings, harampara. It bypasses the necessary stages of labor, honesty, and due process. The straight path ensures earned income, a route that requires patience and integrity, which, by necessity, is rarely the simplest ruler-drawn line.
If you choose the simple line, you bypass the very processes that build character.
And ensure legitimate standing, yes.
The sources use a powerful example from nature to illustrate why even efficiency-minded creatures don't take the shortest route. This is the bird migration example.
Right. Birds are masters of efficiency. But they do not simply fly the shortest line over vast empty oceans. They follow these highly complex, mapped, specific routes. Their paths are determined by subtle environmental factors.
Including the magnetic poles.
Including the magnetic poles, using a mechanism studied under quantum physics.
Quantum physics, wait, you're just saying bird navigation is tied to quantum entanglement?
Specifically, it's tied to molecules in their eyes called cryptochromes. These molecules are sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field, and they act as an internal quantum compass.
That's amazing.
It is. But the point is, even their most optimized path is complex, mapped, and relies on instruments far beyond simple visual sighting. It's a sophisticated route, not just a straight shot. This proves that the right path is always mapped, specific, and requires internal guidance, not just brute force linearity.
Which perfectly sets up the crucial test distinguishing human intellect from mere animal instinct. The mouse test. A human and a mouse stand before a short, obvious path leading directly to a piece of cheese.
Yep.
The mouse takes the shortest path.
And gets trapped. Because the mouse is entirely focused on the reward, the cheese, and the most efficient route to it. It never asks the differentiating questions.
Who put the cheese here?
Or why is this path so short and convenient? The mouse's intellect is locked on immediate low-effort consumption.
And human intellect, the source of our why questions, is what should distinguish us.
Exactly. The straight path requires us to apply the why, to question the source and nature of the gain before we accept the shortest route. If we see a path to easy money or immediate fame or effortless affection, and we don't question the source or the potential trap.
We're acting exactly like the mouse.
Exactly. The straight path is the one that forces inquiry, ensuring the integrity of the process outweighs the speed of the outcome.
That reframes the straight path as an ongoing process of intellectual and ethical inquiry, rather than just a destination. But if it's so vital, why is the prayer for the straight path repeated so often, in every single cycle of prayer? Why the necessity of constant repetition?
The answer lies in the catastrophic consequences of its absence. The sources argue that the more vital something is to human life, and the greater the catastrophe its absence would cause, the more frequently it must be recalled and repeated.
It's high-stakes maintenance.
It is. If deviation is personal kiamet, then the frequency of the reminder reflects the severity of the danger. We need that constant calibration because our potential for deviation, for fucur, is innate.
And the distractions of the shortest route are ever present.
Always. We are constantly in flux, so the path must be constantly reset, like a quantum compass checking the magnetic field every few moments.
Okay. We now know what the path is. An ethical, mapped, and constantly questioned route. We need to shift to understanding what it means to be a traveler on it and the value inherent in that status.
This final section requires a total shift in perspective. The value is not in the arrival, but in the status of the Oku the traveler. We have to focus on being a traveler, actively moving, not a passive resident.
And the sources provide a stunning piece of theological insight to justify this distinction. They reference the devil, Satan, who explicitly stated, "I will sit on your straight path to lead them astray."
It's a profound statement. It tells us that merely being on the path is not a guarantee of safety.
So being on the path isn't the goal. It's almost a dangerous place to be if you're not moving.
Exactly. The devil has strategically occupied the road itself precisely to ambush the complacent. If you're a resident, you set up camp, you assume you're safe because of your location, you become vulnerable to the malice waiting on the path. You must be actively traveling, vigilant, and dynamic.
We did not come into the world to arrive. We came to walk. Why is arrival such an illogical concept in this context?
Because of the nature of the ultimate destination. I mean, if God had a physical address, a fixed location, we could just plug into a GPS.
Then arrival would be the goal.
It would be, and you could be a guest. But since the ultimate reality is transcendent, unbounded by place, the core value cannot be a fixed destination. The proximity and the connection you seek are achieved only through the continuous state of traveling. The moment you stop, you begin to deviate.
This is a powerful critique of what the sources term the arrival trap. Groups, schools of thought, or even individuals often fixate on a specific milestone, be it spiritual enlightenment or financial success, and they fail to recognize the path itself as the standalone eternal value.
They fall into the trap of complaint. You hear it all the time. We are walking, but we haven't arrived yet.
Yeah.
This just shows a complete misunderstanding of the process. The process is the purpose. If you fixate on the outcome, you miss the profound value, the character building, and the joy inherent in the effort you are expending right now. The destination is fluid. The process is eternal.
This brings us to the importance of effort, or EMEC, and embracing the joy of the present process. The sources warn that we are often afflicted by a melancholy Eastern mindset, focusing on what we lack in the future, rather than appreciating the present state of the journey.
We are constantly in a future state of aspiration, which just creates this perpetual deficiency in the present.
Right.
The sources reference the comedian Tim Yilmaz's sketch about the person on vacation who keeps moving frantically, insisting, "We're not going on vacation," because there's always another sight to see, another goal to achieve.
And he's missing the vacation while he's on it.
He's missing the enjoyment of the process by prioritizing the checklist over the experience.
And the term EMEC goes beyond simple effort, doesn't it? It implies labor imbued with soul, with sacrifice and investment.
Yes, it's labor that leaves a part of you in the work. The sources note that this value is often most clearly seen in the effort that goes into, say, raising children or crafting something lasting. It's why women are referenced as those who often treasure what they have labored for, their EMEC. The process, the sacrifice and investment, it increases the perceived value of the outcome exponentially, regardless of objective metrics. The process is validated by the sheer investment of the self.
And to reinforce this idea that honorable conduct and effort trump temporal outcome, the sources bring in a fascinating reference. Carl Gustav Jung.
The influential psychologist, yeah.
He had that famous professional break with Freud, particularly over the reduction of human motivation solely to libido.
Right. And in interviews later in life, long after the separation, Jung was asked about his old mentor. And he offered this profound line that just summarized the importance of the path's integrity. He said, "Respect and dignity are greater than life itself."
That is an immense statement. It places the value of how one lives above the value of that one lives.
It does. It implies that there are ethical moments on the path where maintaining one's integrity, respecting the process, upholding dignity, is worth sacrificing immediate survival or gain. This is the highest philosophical justification for valuing the journey.
The manner of the walk.
The manner of the walk, the EMEC invested, and the integrity upheld. That defines the lasting legacy, not the temporary outcome of simply reaching a destination.
So the true reward, the Karshalik, is the state of being present and honorably engaged in the journey itself. The effort of being here, engaging with this complex material. That is the reward.
Anything less becomes a pure transaction. And the sources specifically criticize the usurer's mindset, the Tafishi mindset, the complaint that I put in effort, so now I demand a specific reward.
It's transactional.
It's treating the creator as a banker who owes you interest on your spiritual investment. It reduces the entire relationship to a transactional exchange.
Therefore, we have to redefine what we ask for on this journey. We will always have new orders or requests, siparish, for the divine, but the critical insight is that gratitude, shukr, is the order request itself.
Yes, if we express gratitude for the path we are on, that appreciation is the highest form of request. God is not interested in endless lists of specific material needs. If you are grateful, that gratitude increases your capacity and provision.
If you are grateful, I will surely increase you.
The promise is clear. The path to receiving more is simply to appreciate the journey you are already walking, because that gratitude recalibrates your entire perspective and your capacity to absorb what is provided.
This deep dive has spanned the vastness of existence, from the lengthening synaptic fibers in your mind to the 249 million-year orbit of our solar system. We've established that deviation, whether it's cellular or cosmic, is catastrophe.
It is.
And the straight path is defined by inquiry and ethical diligence, not efficiency. The core takeaway remains. The integrity of the journey, the EMEC, defines the value, not the destination.
Absolutely. The legacy we leave is the memory of the journey. The Purdit reminds us, the bird dies, remember the flight. The traveler dies, remember the journey. What is recorded is the walk, the struggle, the perseverance. Yeah. Our sources tell us that our memories will meet us after death, meaning the sum total of our path is the reality we carry forward.
That's a powerful final summation on legacy. But I know you have one more provocative thought for us, something to ensure the listener perseveres when the path becomes exhausting.
I do. It concerns reserve capacity and trust. Psychology shows us that when we feel utterly finished, completely burnt out, a reserve energy like adrenaline, a hidden power bank often kicks in. We often have far greater capacity than we give ourselves credit for.
We hit that wall and we declare, I am finished. Hit 'em. Convinced we have nothing left to give.
The sources offer the analogy of the hidden finish line. Imagine running a race, pushing yourself to the absolute limit, and then quitting in despair, only to realize later that the actual finish line was 5 meters beyond where you stopped.
Oh, the regret would be immense.
The profound regret comes from knowing you abandoned the process just short of completion, failing to draw upon that last hidden reserve.
So the final thought is about trust and perseverance.
Yes. Act as if there is always reserve capacity. Keep walking, trusting that the one who owns the road knows exactly how and when to provide the necessary power. Because when you feel like you are completely finished, bid him, you will find someone who says, "I am enough, I have arrived to assist." Get him. That arrival of aid or renewed capacity is often contingent upon you having exhausted what you thought were your limits. Keep walking.
The source material offers a really sprawling philosophical exploration of the path, treating it as both this internal journey and a kind of universal law. We're going to jump right into where we think this vision can be strengthened. So, first up, the sheer breadth of scientific and cultural analogies, while honestly brilliant, risks a kind of philosophical overload by jumping so rapidly between different fields.
Yeah, that's clearly laid out. I was immediately struck by the ambition. I mean, you move so seamlessly from how information becomes biology, the extending of synapse threads, making a new you,
Right.
all the way to the vastness of the cosmos, referencing gravity, the four fundamental forces, even the 249 million-year galactic year. It's a lot.
It is, and the weakness isn't that those concepts are in there. They're magnificent. They really are. They establish this macro path perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is in the transition. The leap from the internal path, like the brain's EEG, anxiety flowing like expressway traffic, to the external path of cosmic orbits is powerful, but
the bridge back gets lost.
exactly. The bridge back to the individual's ethical struggle gets obscured by all that grandeur. The listener is left sort of holding these profound but separate ideas.
And is there a risk there? A risk that these awe-inspiring detours might, unintentionally dilute the core message? The immediate actionable message about personal responsibility?
I think so. The whole point is guidance for their own journey. But we spend a lot of time orbiting the galactic center. We have to make sure the cosmology is serving the psychology, not just distracting from it.
Right. It's so strong at that high-level comparison. This universal law applies everywhere, but the conversation needs to stay on the personal implications of that law.
Yeah, you get that you're supposed to stay on your path like a planet, but you need to feel the consequence of falling out of orbit.
So the suggestion for improvement is really to strengthen that transitional language, to explicitly pull those huge cosmic or biological examples back into the immediate ethical framework.
You need that tether, for sure.
Make sure the metaphors serve the human scale journey.
Okay, so for a concrete example, take that beautiful part where you discuss gravity, how the universe stays on its path to avoid a cosmic final hour, a qiyamah.
Such a colossal analogy.
It is. So use that scale. Use it to explicitly introduce the weight, the consequence of the individual's own deviation. Call it their personal qiyamah.
I love that, a personal qiyamah. It grounds the universal law in something with immediate, urgent stakes.
It does. It shifts an ethical slip-up from being a minor mistake to being a fundamental breakdown of your own personal order.
And you could do the same thing with the time scale.
Exactly. That 249 million-year orbit of the sun, that timescale is it's profound.
You can link that monumental timescale directly to the patience required for the internal path.
Yes. Contrast that cosmic perseverance with our very human desire for instant results, instant enlightenment.
That juxtaposition just hits you immediately. It turns a cosmological fact into a moral tool. It's like saying the universe has a 249 million-year commitment. Your small path requires at least a fraction of that.
It completely redefines perseverance, and it makes sure those grand analogies become really personal anchors.
Okay, so that leads us to the second point, which is about a philosophical tension that I think needs more space. It's about sharpening the difference between simple movement and actual progress.
This feels like the most critical part of the whole work, but it needs to be anchored more firmly in psychology. The material introduces this great concept, movement without progress, hareket ediyor ama yol almıyor.
Right.
But it should probably dedicate more weight to unpacking the difference between just being on the path and being a dedicated traveler, a yolcu.
Okay, so what I really like about this section is that clear distinction. You say the person who is walking but not progressing is lost, kaybol mishter. That's a powerful idea.
It is.
It sets up the realization that even shaitan can sit on the straight path. It's not the location, it's the intent, the commitment. That idea is brilliant, but it feels like you move past it too quickly.
That's the core strength, for sure. But the weakness is that it doesn't explore why people confuse movement with progress. We get the analogy about seeking information you already know, which is a good start. But then it jumps to the very complex commentary on the Tin Surah. Creation in the best state, then descent.
And that quick jump means the central tension gets underdeveloped. The difference between the rat seeking the quickest cheese and the human asking why the cheese is there in the first place. That Nietzschean question.
Yes! That moment of ethical reckoning, the psychological pull of the fast lane, that deserves more focus. We identify this profound philosophical gap but don't really demonstrate its danger enough.
So the suggestion then is to leverage the metaphors you already have, like the rat trap, to create a prolonged moment of reckoning.
Right.
Force the listener to really dwell on the allure and the deceptive speed of the haram path versus the difficult, rightful path of halal earnings, of deserved achievements.
We have to make that internal choice feel visceral. You have that Nussertin Hosha riddle where the straight path is not the shortest, fastest route.
Right.
So immediately connect that back to the brain's expressway analogy from the first point.
And make it a direct, even uncomfortable question for the listener. Is the shortest path the one where lust or anger flows like a constant stream of light? That dark, deadly light, you call it.
Exactly.
You could explicitly map the ethical choice, the Nietzschean, the why, onto the neurological choice. Which brain path are you making dominant through sheer repetition?
That connection makes the ethical decision feel physically urgent. The path isn't just metaphysical, it's the actual infrastructure of your identity.
And to really drive it home, you can use that analogy of the autoimmune disease, where the body's own friendly cells attack the good cells.
That's a powerful medical metaphor for this. The system moves, it fights, it generates enormous energy, but it moves against its own best interest.
It perfectly illustrates movement without progress at a cellular level. It shows that huge effort, continuous action, it's all not enough if the alignment is flawed. The disease isn't stillness, it's misdirected activity.
Which is a compelling way to cement the idea that movement isn't enough. It's alignment and intent that define the path.
And that allows us to transition really naturally to our third and final critique, which is about maximizing the impact by defining the process as the outcome itself.
Yeah, because if alignment is critical and movement alone is meaningless, then what's the proper reward for the true traveler?
Exactly. The material's assertion that the process, the suraj, is the highest reward, and that shukr, gratitude, supersedes saparish, ordering, that's a huge paradigm shift.
It is, but it requires some concrete operationalization for the listener. This is where the theoretical has to become really applicable.
The critique of seeking arrival is so insightful. The idea that so many institutions are focused on reaching a static destination rather than valuing the journey.
It does, but once the listener accepts that yolda olmak, being on the path, is the goal. Okay, the philosophical shift is done, but the psychological practice is missing. How do they actually do this every day without slipping back?
And that's the core weakness. Our listener is results-oriented. They've been conditioned to be. They need concrete ways to internalize this idea that Alagina sees aldeness. You have already received your reward.
Right.
The concept that just showing up, just putting in the effort, that is the result, rather than some future outcome. That's highly conceptual on its own.
And the criticism of the tefeji approach, the loan shark, transactional mindset, where every action demands a return, is devastatingly accurate. But we need a clear alternative model to replace that habit. So the suggestion is to translate process as reward into tangible, repeatable practices. Reframing techniques the listener can use immediately to move from just accepting the idea to actually embodying it.
Okay, so let's start with the most repetitive action, prayer. You could reframe the repetition of Ihdinas sirat al-mustaqim, guide us to the straight path. Suggest it's not a desperate plea for a future answer, but a ritualistic, continuous affirmation of the commitment to just keep traveling, to stay the course.
So the act of asking becomes the process and the immediate reward. You're not asking to be guided. You're reaffirming you're willing to be guided. The reward is in that present tense commitment.
Exactly. And you can apply this to their creative efforts too, the documents they submit. You use that profound quote, Kuş ölür, sen uçuşu hatırla. The bird dies, you remember the flight.
Oh, that's a great application. Suggest they stop focusing on the final state of the document, the dead bird, and instead focus on how the work embodies the quality of their journey, their effort.
Right. The value isn't in the acceptance or the praise, but in the execution, the hours of honest struggle that made it. That shifts the entire metric of success.
It really does.
And finally, we have to explicitly link shukur, gratitude, as the non-transactional antidote to the saparish mentality. That's a huge breakthrough that just needs a little more reinforcement.
Showing how being content with the current stage of the journey, giving thanks for the capacity to travel, naturally leads to growth.
Because that gratitude shifts the focus from, I don't have X, I must order it, to, I have the ability to strive, and that ability is the gift.
Which is the real meaning of, if you are thankful, I will increase you? The increase is a deepening of the process, not a sudden delivery of a static reward.
By providing these kinds of daily, actionable methods, the listener can move beyond just understanding the idea and actually start living the journey as the ultimate reward.
This has been a deeply insightful exploration. Movement, progress, the value of the journey. It's all embedded in this philosophical work. You've really created an incredibly rich and thought-provoking framework.
And our main actionable points for strengthening it are really about maximization. First, manage that expansive scope by forcefully reconnecting the cosmic analogies back to the internal human path. Personalize the consequences.
Second, sharpen that critical contrast between just walking and being a true traveler. Really explore the psychological allure of the shortest route versus the difficult, rightful path.
And finally, provide those concrete daily applications for embracing the process as the ultimate reward. Move past the transactional mindset by reframing things like prayer and how we measure success.
We invite you to refine your work based on this critique and send it back in. We are always here, ready to see where the journey takes you next.
Welcome to the debate. The source material we're looking at today offers this just an incredibly rich, multi-layered understanding of what it calls the way, or yol. It fuses some really profound philosophical and ethical ideas with these, well, surprisingly specific analogies from cosmology and even modern neuroscience.
It's a powerful challenge, isn't it? It really forces you to move past these, superficial ideas of effort and really define what the right path, the Sirati Mustaqim, actually is. And the core tension is right there from the start. Is the focus on the energy of the movement, or is it on the outcome, the direction?
And that tension, exactly, that dynamic between the movement and the ultimate end, that's the central question we're debating. Is the essential value of the Sirat al-Mustaqim found primarily in the ongoing, transformative process of continual effort and internal change? Or is that value, fundamentally linked to an alignment toward a necessary moral destination?
And I maintain that the value is absolutely rooted in alignment. The source material is, it's pretty blunt. That movement without proper direction isn't just inefficient, it's catastrophic. An individual who is perpetually, quote, walking but not making progress is, by the material's own definition, lost.
And I'll be arguing that the primary value resides in the transformative process itself, that the goal isn't some fixed arrival point, but the very act of self-creation, of internal transformation that happens during the journey itself, independent of a singular destination. My position is really supported by the source's profound use of this neurological analogy. It describes knowledge, which, we can call the metaphysical software, as something that fundamentally alters the biological hardware of the brain. The path, therefore, isn't really a road under our feet, but the constant remodeling of our own minds.
The emphasis on neurological restructuring is certainly one of the most intriguing aspects of the material.
It is. When we truly grapple with difficult knowledge, the source says it causes the brain to burn, and this is a sign of success. a fundamental remodeling where the synapse threads literally extend their ends. This physical extension is the creation of a new self. The brain's surface area actually increases, new valleys, new peaks are formed. So learning is change, and that change is the goal. I mean, if you're not learning and changing, you are functionally the same person you were 5 years ago, right? The value, therefore, is in that internal dynamic. We are not meant to arrive at a final menzil, but to walk. To fixate on some distant payoff, you risk missing the inherent pleasure, the grace, the ihsan that is embedded within the walking process itself. The result is here and now.
I deeply appreciate the focus on internal dynamism, I do. But the source material, it anchors the definition of right in direction, not just activity. We have to address that stark warning. The individual who is hareket ediyor ama yol almıyor, moving but not making progress, is categorized as kaybolmuştur, lost. The structural capacity for movement that you're emphasizing, it means nothing if that movement is just circular. And to understand direction, we have to look at the cosmic analogy the material gives us. All existence, from the largest galaxy to the smallest particle, follows a rigorous, defined path, a yorunge. This path is maintained by this incredibly precise optimal balance, governed by the 4 fundamental forces. You deviate from that prescribed orbital path even a little, and the system collapses into chaos. Qiyamah, the end.
Okay, but how does that immense cosmic stability translate directly to the ethical choices of a single human being?
It translates by demonstrating that movement has to be aligned with a systemic necessity. Ethically, the material shows us that the shortest, most effortless path is very often the deviation. For example, reaching wealth quickly through haram, unlawful means. That's the shortest physical path. But the true Sirati Mustaqim requires the longer, more difficult path that leads to halal kazanch, lawful, deserved gain. So this moral economy proves that the path is ultimately validated by its alignment with a necessary moral endpoint, not just the enthusiasm of the person walking it.
This brings us right to the core of it then, the function of movement. I'm championing the internal change, but I hear your challenge. How do I reconcile this idea that change is inherently good if the material defines movement without progress as being lost?
Exactly. Your emphasis on dynamic change, it risks celebrating undirected energy. We could build a perfectly functional, brand new neurological superhighway that leads, well, straight off a moral cliff. If the path's only measure is its internal construction, we lose any external anchor for morality.
Right. I see why you frame it that way, but let's be a bit more precise about what the source defines as lost. Being lost applies when the individual is fixated on external, transactional results. You know, the quickest path to the cheese, to use the material's own analogy. However, the internal neurological path-making, the extension of synapses, the increase of abstract capacity, that is progress. It's a vertical internal movement. We are moving from a state of lesser capacity to greater capacity. We're expanding our internal universe. The measure of success isn't arriving at a static external destination. It's maximizing the unique human capacity to question the very premise. It's the capacity to look at the cheese and ask, who put the cheese here? And why should I trust the setup? The mouse just follows the route. The traveler questions the map itself. That process, that repatterning, is the path.
That is a profound distinction between the mouse and the human traveler. But even if we agree that our capacity for abstraction is increased, we still haven't addressed the purpose of that expansion. And that leads us to our second point, the content of the structure.
Well, I would assert that the sheer biological complexity of the brain, its roads, side streets, main streets, and highways, as the material so beautifully puts it, shows that the ultimate success is achieved by maximizing the capacity for thought. The structural integrity, the scale of this neural architecture, is the success story of the path.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it differently. While the structural blueprint of the brain is there, the highways and side roads, it's the traffic flowing through those routes that determines its ethical function. And the material explicitly discusses the content of that traffic. Is the neural highway carrying lust, shevhet, anger, ethke, Or is it fear? Korku.
But we have to assume the continuous effort leads toward beneficial information. Otherwise, the whole concept just collapses.
Can we assume that, though, the source describes traffic as a killing light, like ultraviolet, cancer-causing? So this suggests that if the paths are structurally present, even hyperactive, but they're carrying destructive, poisonous content, then the increased structural capacity is not only meaningless, it's actually dangerous. A larger, faster brain running on UFK is just a more efficient machine for moral destruction. The process of building the highway is secondary to the quality of the cargo it carries.
I agree that content matters. It matters deeply. But structuring the argument solely around the final alignment, the moral destination, risks falling prey to what the source critically calls Tifichi Dushinjatarza.
Usury thinking. Tell me more about why you see the pursuit of alignment that way.
Well, Tifichi Dushinjatarza, this usury thinking, it describes a transactional mindset where every effort is calculated as an investment for a future payoff. It's the spiritual equivalent of saying, I prayed 5 times today, so I am owed a reward tomorrow. It treats the whole relationship with the divine and the path itself like a ledger of debts and credits. And the material critiques this by arguing that the profound satisfaction, the sheer joy found in the current effort, in the immediate assembly of one's spiritual self, is the inherent counterpayment. The result is here, now, in the act of striving and being present. When you walk the path with ihsan, with excellence, the grace you experience in that moment is its own complete reward. If we only walk because we expect something later, we miss the entire point of the process.
That's a powerful critique against a transactional approach to spirituality. I will grant you that. However, I'm just not convinced by the implication that having a destination is inherently transactional. I think that line of reasoning dangerously minimizes the role of purpose, which the material itself elevates. I mean, have you considered that the source directly links amachlolik, purposefulness, to the divine? It says unequivocally that purposefulness is alaliktir. So purpose isn't just a desired outcome, it's a fundamental characteristic of the whole system. Furthermore, the material describes human potential as having 2 critical seeds inside us. Fujur, which is irresponsibility, deviation from the path, and taqwa, piety. Nurturing the taqwa seed implies a rigorous striving toward a morally purposeful outcome. If we just celebrate the continuous motion, the process, we blur the ethical line between tending to fujur or taqwa.
The entire concept of taqwa is inherently teleological. It aims at a specific end.
Right, but that end, that desired alignment, is only achieved through repeated and sustained effort, which brings us to the source's greatest warning regarding direction.
Precisely. The material warns us that Satan will sit on the straight path, Sirat Mustaqim, to lead travelers astray. This is an incredible, terrifying insight. The danger is not off the path, in the wilderness, but right in the middle of it. And this proves that merely being on the path, just participating in the process, is not enough. You have to possess the clarity, the vigilance to choose how to walk. And this constant need for discernment requires a clear, unwavering alignment toward the destination to avoid that internal sabotage.
I see why you think that, and the danger of deception is undeniable. But let me offer a different perspective on why this deception is so pervasive. This very danger is what necessitates the constant, daily repetition of the plea, Ihdina siratal mustaqim, guide us to the straight path. We repeat this ceaselessly. Why?
To seek correction, obviously.
Yes, but the sheer frequency underscores the fragility of certainty. The path isn't a single, static thing. It's a dynamic, ever-changing state of being that requires continuous maintenance. We repeat the prayer because the likelihood of error is so high, and the path shifts beneath our feet. This relentless requirement for self-correction emphasizes the path as a requirement for sustained process, a mechanism of continual adjustment, not reliance on a single moment of arrival. The process of adjustment is the alignment.
The adjustment is necessary, yes, but its purpose is to prevent Qiyamet, the ultimate deviation. Whether we are discussing the gravitational stability of a star or the ethical system of a human, the continuous striving, the process, only gains its moral weight when it successfully achieves the alignment with the divinely established structure.
The repetition of ihdina siratal mustaqim is a plea for renewed orientation toward a fixed ideal, not a request for a path that's always changing its definition.
And I maintain that the capacity to make that continuous, dynamic effort, the remodeling of the self, is the primary measure of human success on this path. So look, our discussion today has really illuminated this necessary tension between internal transformation and external purpose. For my part, the essence of the path still lies in that continual human journey of growth, which is evidenced by those profound, measurable biological changes. I prioritize the intrinsic value found in the effort, in the walk itself, over the expectation of some final fixed destination. As the source material reminds us, we have to remember the flight, not just the death of the bird.
And while acknowledging the vital role of that continuous process and the internal architecture you described so well, for me, the definition of the right path remains intrinsically linked to proper alignment. Without rigorous adherence to an optimal moral balance, whether that's manifest in the universe's predictive yorgay or in the ethical striving for Hel el-Khazanch, movement, however sophisticated, just becomes a means of getting lost faster. The process serves the purpose, not the other way around.
It seems we are forced by the source material to recognize that the path is not an either-or proposition.
Indeed. The material demands that we hold these dualities in tension. The path requires both an unwavering commitment to continuous change and a rigorous, focused attention to direction. There remains so much more to explore in how these necessities, the internal effort and the external moral anchor, manifest and coexist in the experience of any dedicated traveler.